Title I've given this video is the Biden battle over? Must we resign ourselves to this probable future? I've been thinking last couple days a lot about the famous serenity prayer. That's the one where a person prays for the serenity to accept what cannot be changed, the courage to change what can be changed, and the wisdom to be able to tell one from the other. I can tell why it would be a prayer, because if you're on your own about those things, it's really not all that easy to apply. Very good conceptualization. I think it does one good to recognize that banging your head against things that can't be changed is folly, and that failing to muster the courage to change what can and should be changed is dereliction of duty. But then there's that wisdom thing. And how do you know when something can't be changed? And when is certainty certain enough? When the stakes in whether things get changed or not are small, or as in this case, huge. Lately, it has seemed that there's been a general consensus that when it comes to this must-win election to save American democracy, the lead champion for the forces of democracy were going to remain Joe Biden. There were 2.5 weeks when the mounting pressures seemed like they might prevail. But the president persisted, insisted, proclaimed that he was going to stay on the top of the ticket. He declared that he felt certain that he was the Democrat best able to defeat Donald Trump. And the must-win election is because if Donald Trump gets the powers of the presidency, the consequences are hard to overstate. The potential consequences are catastrophic. I've found that as that outcome is looking more and more likely, I've become a planner of changes in my life in order to survive in this apparently likely new stage of American history. Well, President Biden believed himself to be the best candidate to defeat Donald Trump. But I follow the futures markets, such as they are these days, but predicted.org. And it was hard not to notice that as the wisdom of the crowd that futures markets are supposed to reflect was concluding over the course of just a few days that Biden had outlasted the pressure, as his probabilities of leading the ticket went from the 1 out of 3 chance not that long ago up to the low 70% chance. The probability of Donald Trump winning the presidency was climbing in tandem. The crowd did not agree with Joe Biden. And neither do I. I would love to think that Joe Biden has some veteran politician insight into the situation that people pressuring him did not have. But I don't think that psychologically that seems unlikely to explain it, because at least putting myself in Biden's position, if there were so many people, really respectable people, really eager to see this election go the right way and democracy to survive, we're seeing it differently from the way I was seeing it. I wouldn't have had the chutzpah to say, well, I'm the guy who has the power to keep things, the ticket as it is, and nobody else can get me off the ticket but me, and I'm right and they're all wrong. I might think that I was right. And in fact, it may be true that Biden can win. But there's a lot of reason to question that. For example, I read today in the Bulwark writings that in a variety of states, not only is Trump beating Biden, but Biden is running measurably below other Democrats, like senatorial candidates in those states. I think Arizona, Wisconsin, maybe Michigan. I don't remember if the states were listed. And also there are poll numbers that indicate that other potential Democratic presidential nominees in those polls, in some polls, are running ahead of Biden by several points. That seems pretty clear. So are we to believe that that game that the Democrats, that crisis the Democrats went through after the June 27th debate, it's getting to be a long time ago, 3 weeks tomorrow. Are we to conclude that that has been resolved, that Joe Biden has dug himself into that position and nothing whatsoever would change his mind? I don't know. I don't like the psychological signs of what he's been doing in insisting in an election that he knows as well as anybody else that the stakes are just huge. I have felt and said from the day after that debate that the course for the Democrats to take is whichever course maximizes the chance that Donald Trump will not regain the powers of the presidency. It's as simple as that. There is no scenario of the Democrats winning with any of the potential nominees, including Joe Biden, including Kamala Harris, including Gretchen Whitmer, including Shapiro from Pennsylvania and Newsom from California. All of those are, I'm not going to say infinitely, but hugely superior to losing the election to Donald Trump and now J.D. Vance. That's really what matters. Everything else is secondary. Everything that Joe Biden wants for himself should be entirely secondary. So is it time to have the serenity to accept what can't be changed? I don't think that we can know for certain. And with the stakes this high, I think we really need to know for certain before we give up on something which the verdict of the wider world is this is not looking good for the side of democracy with Joe Biden on the head of the ticket. Well, it would have been a lot better if the transformation into a new candidate had taken place 2 weeks ago. But that didn't happen. And if Joe Biden is going to lead the ticket, it's important that efforts to change that outcome, not damage him as a presidential candidate. I think he's already pretty damaged. I read a bunch of people who are very encouraged that he has this news conference and this rally and shows that he's really pretty with it. But a lot of people also are able to observe he's not all that with it. He's not so impressively with it that it will undo the damage that's been done by that debate and all the worries that made, even before the debate, some almost 2/3 of Americans say age has affected him in ways that have rendered him unfit for another term in office. I could imagine that he could, just in a Hollywood movie, he could start dazzling people. But I think he's giving us what he's got. And what he's got is respectable up to a point. But he is burdened with the image that the American people have of him, which I thought was erroneous, but now I think it's not so erroneous. I heard a voter from some focus group say, I'd vote for Joe Biden even if he were dead. And by God, so would I. That's the nature of these stakes. But there aren't going to be enough people who feel that way. And I don't know that Biden is going to be capable, as I say, of prosecuting the case against Trump enough to rouse the American people in sufficient numbers to vote for him because he's not Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is just completely unacceptable. I do believe that the overwhelming majority of Americans would reject Donald Trump if they saw what he represented clearly enough. But if Joe Biden's at the top of the ticket, there's going to be a lot more attention than there should be about questions of that kind of fitness for office versus the kind of fitness for a habitual liar and a one-man crime wave and a would-be fascist dictator. Those are hard to convey to people who are much more accustomed to seeing a boxer who should retire because he doesn't have it anymore, doesn't have the legs, or a quarterback that should retire because he doesn't have what it takes. We human beings understand the human life cycle better than we understand something like a fascist force that threatens something so abstract as American democracy. Good luck getting that across to the 72% of Americans who have told pollsters after the debate that they think Joe Biden is unfit for the presidency because he's been disabled by age. So then there's the question, well, changed by whom? The serenity to accept what I cannot change. Well, I'm just a little guy. I've got, this platform, or got a little bit of that platform. But when you take something so huge as the fate of American democracy, the outcome of a presidential election will do in a country of 1/3 of a billion people. That's really big. And not only the fate of American democracy, but, really quite arguably, we're at a hinge point in history. If America goes the wrong way at this hinge point, the fate of human civilization is really at stake. And, as much as I entertain some, what some people would say grandiose, but I don't think that's the right word, but I can understand why people would. I have this better human story that is my usual reason for making these videos, to get across to more people that I think could help human civilization survive. As much as I believe that I've created something of real importance, I recognize I'm just a marginal guy. If all the stuff that has come out in the New York Times and The Economist, and from donors and from Hollywood celebrities and senators and members of the House of Representatives trying to influence the president to not make a decision that impacts everybody on the planet, potentially, but certainly in this country, just on the basis of his one say-so, his one belief that he's the best candidate. I recognize that while Joe Biden's in a position to do something which is way bigger than one person should be able to decide, but that's the nature of, we can have a nuclear war because of one person making the wrong decision, though it takes two people to turn both keys or something like that. But I recognize that I'm just a little guy. So I'm making this video with the thought in mind that I'm going to send a link to this video to someone I know who's not such a little guy as me, who I'm very grateful is interested in what I've got to say, and who has access to people who are not as big as Joe Biden, though potentially there's access there too. I don't know about that. And I'll just say to this person, is the Biden game over? Do we have to reconcile ourselves to what the futures markets are saying? That we got between a 2-to-1 and 3-to-1 chance that Donald Trump is going to assume the presidency? And that maybe we're going to lose the country we've all loved and benefited from? Our history over the generations for more than 2 centuries? Is there something that you, not such a little guy, can do? Do you have access to people like Nancy Pelosi? Is there anything that even she could do? Do the Obamas have access to Biden or to Jill Biden? Is there anybody who's in a position where they can summon up the courage to change what could be changed, if anything could change this? And that's one more thing in that serenity prayer. The courage to change what can be changed. Well, often courage is what's required. I recognize that. And I've seen a lot of people who just keep their heads down rather than show that kind of courage. But it often takes something more than courage. It takes creativity. It takes strategy. I thought that Nancy Pelosi's one venture where she says, it's up for him to decide, sort of, on the one hand, oh, it's up to Mr. President Biden. I have all kinds of faith in him to decide and to do the right thing, to decide the right, but ignoring the fact that he had told us again and again that he'd already decided. Now, that was a kind of creativity. It's sort of a psychotherapist trick or something like that. Well, I don't know I don't know who, and I don't know what, but my venture here is to say, I do not have the serenity to accept that this can't be changed and that nothing I can do can change it. So I'm going to do the one thing that I can come up with right now to do. I don't want to damage Joe Biden if he's going to be at the top of the ticket, which is why if there's going to be a change, it probably has to be wrought in private. Maybe a sit down, several people together, maybe Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi, and maybe if he respects Bill Clinton. I don't know who all commands Joe Biden's attention at such a level that he might ever back down from the position that he's been insisting on for 3 weeks now. But I'm not ready to throw in the towel. There's just too much at stake. And there are too many signs that Joe Biden has made a really serious mistake here in digging himself in on this. Here's a guy who, if he had backed down, would have guaranteed himself a most honored place in American history. He's done a great job in many ways as the transitional president he apparently imagined himself to be at the outset. And then if he voluntarily says, he can even say, I think I could have beat him, but for the good of the country and out of respect for the opinions of all these people who are great American patriots, I'm going to lay out this way of proceeding to replace me between now and a month from now when the Democrats have their national convention. He would be guaranteed a great place in American history. But if the major impact he has on history is that he insisted on heading the ticket in a must-win election and ignored all the evidence that he was not the strongest candidate we could put forward, and that he was greatly increasing the chance that American democracy would fail, and that the free world that needs America to have a leader of the free world, not like Donald Trump, if he takes it upon himself to play that role in spite of all the reasons not to, and then he loses, is there anybody in history that would be, I mean, we have Chamberlain waving a piece of paper in 1938, I bring you peace in our times. Well, he was duped by Hitler. He should have known better. Winston Churchill knew better back for years that they didn't listen to him. But I think that there's this, if he loses, his place in history will be, oh, I have enough vanity, I would really want to avoid that. I would not want that to be my legacy. I was pig-headed. I was, like Maureen Dodds compared him to King Lear, refusing to see what must be seen, making foolish decisions that have catastrophic results. The old man coming from the wrong place, not seeing the right picture, making the foolish decision, and at the end of the play, his beloved daughter, who really did love him, is dead. Well, American democracy owes Joe Biden a lot. Not if he insists on this and moves forward and then blows it, which is what the world seems to have concluded is the consequence of Joe Biden sewing up the nomination. So, my friend out there to whom this link will be sent, I hope this is of some use to you. I know you to be brilliant, creative, articulate, and well-connected. Not the little guy I am. And if you can come up with something good, that would be so great. I don't want my kids and my grandkids growing up in a fascist society where the climate change is something that gets ignored, where we buddy up to dictators and not to the people they invade. I don't need to go through that list. That's it for today. If you like my series of commentaries on various things, often big picture, sometimes smaller picture, but all integrated into one picture of a better human story, please follow, like, subscribe, and send links to other people you think would like them. And visit my website, abetterhumanstory.org, where I lay out that whole integrated picture in an elaborate way that I think holds water.